Welcome for those brave enough to return and those brave enough to see what this channel is about. I hope everyone has had a day that has been good to them. I have the weekend off. I've been thinking about on Saturday just coming on to chat and, seeing who's still around. No story or anything, just talk and being in the present. I'm just going to casually pin my link then on Saturday if anyone wants to pop up with me. So I'm starting the panel, y'all. And I figured it would be a chance to try out doing this live. See how that goes. I promise not to keep you guys nearly as long for this one. It should be pretty straightforward. So I hope you guys stick around. What I hope to get with this is, I'm not sure how I'm gonna be putting out like what order. Not necessarily that you have to watch them in a certain order, but I feel like the way that I have been going about it is kind of um, doing them in a way that when I first started talking about things, the things that I got back. And uh, believe it or not, bonding in the way I went about things was kind of the one of the first things that got thrown back to me. Surprisingly, that came before, if you listen to my story, that came before anybody called me crazy or anything like that. It was the bonding. So I feel like people didn't necessarily think that I got the bonding. It's a little different the way I went through things. Okay, so I I hope this kind of puts that to rest. Like it's different, and I'm just bringing a new kind of experience. This is my experience, a new kind of perspective to the table, and so yeah. I think that's enough stalling. So I'm just gonna jump right into it. Okay. Um, After the adoption and when I first put myself out there and I started researching and all this, uh, a lot of birth mothers and studies talk about the separation of a baby and a mother at birth. They speak a lot about bonding that has already happened between a mother and a child inside the womb. Naturally, when people find out that I did not hold my son or visit him in the nursery, and that he went straight to his adoptive parents, they do not agree. They tell me how I messed up. Many people from our family on both sides did not agree. I understand how they feel because I thought long about it. It wasn't an easy decision. Now, if his parents wanted their family up there, and for all I know, they could have. I don't think that they did. I would have completely loved that for them. I would have. For me, it made perfect sense. We also hear that baby needs mom, baby is better with mom. I agree in most cases, but in others, baby does not need to be with mom. So I hope that in this video, people can see that I very much understand the bonding process and the lack of. Bonding for me is a huge deal. It has been from how I grew up to when I had my first child and how his delivery went. It was the second most scariest time of my life. And all I waited with him after everything was that skin to skin. I feel like God introduced just how important bonding is very early on in my life. So we'll kind of be getting two short stories here. I will try to make this as short as possible. Um, I believe strongly in the bonding process. From my perspective, yes, he had already bonded with me for 9 months. Once I made that decision, he didn't need to bond with me any further. I needed to give him the best chance at bonding with his mom. She didn't get those 9 months, and that's just how I my perspective in looking at it. And I hope the things, this story that I'm about to tell you, uh, kind of reflects that. Um, so I'm going to share a story about the relationship with my mom. It was something that I looked back on a lot through all of this, helping me decide what he needed and really who he needed, and that was not me. When I was just walking age, I spent a lot of time with one of my aunts, who always dreamed of having a little girl. I remember being there long enough. We went on vacations, and I just remember feeling so loved. And then suddenly, it was just like a blur. I was back at home with mom, with my family. And then I remember growing up. Growing up, there was always a distance between me and my mom, a disconnect, and I felt it deeply. For my sisters, when it came to heartbreaks and needing advice, my mom was there with the ice cream and the tissues. For me, it was more get over it, you're overreacting, or just a strong sense of not caring, like I was bothering her. I was told that I would never be anything, that I would be barefoot and pregnant before I leave high school. When belly buttons were all the rage, I was always told that I was too fat, despite I was not. My mom always struggled with her weight, though. It was clear growing up that she never wanted any kind of bond with me that I wanted with her, the kind that she had with my sisters. For instance, and I wasn't sure if I was going to share this one, but for the sake of understanding bonds, I will. And none of this is to bash. It's just really just to help people understand how I made the decisions that I made and why I went about things the way I did. So when I was like 15, I don't know, I had needed a worker's permit because I was still in school. So I really wanted my first car. I mean, it was just freedom in so many different ways on so many different levels. So mom said if I got a job and pretty much gave her my paychecks to help out around the house, that at tax time she would get me a car. Now at this point, I had no reason, even with the meanness and the distance, I had no reason to believe that she would ever do anything of the following. So flash forwards tax time, I'm at my boyfriend's house and I get a picture of two cars, and I am immediately happy. I'm so excited. And then I scroll down and it says me and my sister's name's car. She had gotten my sister and herself a car. Devastated would be an understatement, but that was truly the first time that I knew that not only she was distant, but also the depths of the meanness that she could be. Just things that in my perspective, I feel she would never do to my sisters. So one day, I went to one of my aunts who I did have a close relationship with. My grandma, who passed in 2003. I was in the eighth grade, sadly, and my aunt. I feel like those two were the two to fill that gap and give me that motherly bond. So I went to her and I said, I don't understand what I ever did to make mom hate me so much. Like, what did I do? So that's when she told me it probably has a lot to do about the day I was born. Now, there's five of us growing up in the house, my mom and my stepdad between us. But at the time, my mom was 18 when she had my older sister, and then a year and 4 months later she was having me. So I can understand very much, especially with going through what I did, just how overwhelmed she must have been feeling. Um, so after she had me, she got in the elevator and planned on leaving me behind. On the way down, my biological dad's best friend just happened to get in and asked where I was. And my mom responded, I don't know, I'm going home. He talked her into going back up. I do not have to imagine now so hard on what that conversation might have been like. I can imagine that it was a lot of, that's silly. Let's go get your baby. She needs her mom. It'll be okay. You're just scared. And, it's so well intended. But, I just believe that sometimes people just need to really listen. But it was like a light came on for me, like everything clicked and made sense. The rift, the distance, the way she treated me differently. For me, it all stemmed from that moment. My whole life, I felt like I didn't belong, like a black sheep. I felt it before I even knew it. Like it was there before I even knew. I was probably no older than uh, 14, 15 when I found out. When I confronted my mom, she gave me the silence and the half answers, but just the way she acted, just the way she responded without talking, I knew enough that it was true. I remember even then feeling just very, very sad for her. And I just, I can only imagine if you listen to my story, like her sitting there in silence. She never said anything when I told my parents that we were placing him. Um, and that's why I said, I don't give her too much of a hard time for that. I just wish we could have, I wish we could have. And I can understand very well that between people, with good intentions saying, you know, you're just scared, it'll come, let's go get your baby. And then people like my dad who screamed at me and said all the things that he did to me and stormed out of my house. I don't give her too much of a hard time. Um, but I remember feeling that light come on. But yeah, very much. It all made sense. Years later, in my late 20s, my second child was barely walking. And out of nowhere, me and my mom, I can't even remember the conversation that we were having because it was just so profound. Like, um, out of nowhere, she apologized for the way she treated me growing up. She admitted that there came a time where she grew jealous of me, that I was everything that she wished she could have been, but she had kids so young, and she resented me for that. And I'm not sure, why that resentment fell on me, but I do understand because of where she was at the time in her mind frame. But like you said, there's 5 of us in the household, and you would just be so. It's crazy that you have 5 people living in the same household, but you have 5 completely different perspectives in relationships, and it's crazy. But sadly, nothing changed between us after that. But it was the best gift she could have given me. Answers. It was like all that time I thought it was my fault, but she took that burden away from me, and I will forever be grateful for that. So believe me when I say the bond is real, the bond matters. Am I saying like, oh, my mom should not, but that's why when I made the decision to place my son for adoption, it was no longer about the bond between him and me. It was all about the bond between him and his mom. When he was born, he went straight to her. They did everything: feeding, sleeping, testing. He needed to hear them, not me. Um, Not for me, but for him. Which leads me into my next little short story here. I'm going to tell you about the birth of my firstborn, because of how I felt afterwards. Uh, so it was a very, very tough pregnancy. The morning sickness never went away, and slowly that turned into preeclampsia. I was cramping, this feeling deep down inside. I felt like he has no room. He wants out. I mean, the whole time he was in there, he stayed in the down position, ready to come out. I mean, he had his hand up by his forehead and his eyelid, and he stayed in that position so much that for the first year or so of his life, he had markings because he just did not want to move. And I got big, but I didn't get so big. I was able to wear my regular jeans, and everything in me was screaming, he doesn't have room. And I don't know. I always had the feeling like he's not going to stay in the whole time. I don't know. So I went in for my stress test. And while I was sitting there listening to his heart stopped beating. The doctor came over and it started beating. He walked away again. All these doctors came over, and even my husband in the waiting room messaged me, was like, please tell me they're not all for you. And I was like, I would love to tell you that, but they are. So it came, his heart stopped again, and the doctor came over, and I, even before leaving for my stress test, I remember looking at my mom and my little sister and saying, they were like, good luck. But I remember looking at them and saying, I just have a feeling I'm not coming home without a baby. So flash forward, his heart stopped again, and we head over to the hospital. This is like 8-9 o'clock in the morning, maybe a little bit later. His heart stopped a few times over there, and I kind of ended up having a emergency, non-emergency C-section. They tried to get him to come on his own, but I just would not go into labor, long story short. So I ended up having him at 2:10, and when he came out, all the doctors thought he was sleeping. And I even have a picture of them holding him up. That they're looking down before they pull him out, and they're like, oh, he's sleeping. And then they hold him up, and we snap a picture, and they realize he's not sleeping, he's not breathing. And all these doctors come in, and the worst thing the anesthesiologist could ask me is if I was okay, because I went off on him. No, I'm not okay. And I didn't hear him cry. He wasn't. So all these doctors came in, and it took a few minutes, but he finally was breathing. But because of all that, I didn't get to meet him until 8:30. So I had him at 2:10, but I didn't get to meet him until 8:30. All these people in between, I got to feed him, change him, touch him, and he's never even heard me, let alone touch me. So I was so scared when he came in, that he wasn't going to know who I was. He'd done bonded with all these other people. And I was scared. I was really scared. They sat him on me, and I did not speak. I was crying. And he's laying on me. And when I did speak, he lifted his head right off of me. And the nurses came running because he wasn't supposed to do that. But if you listen and know my story, my son I placed did the same thing when I finally got the courage to go say bye. I didn't hold him, but when I spoke, he was sleeping in his mom's arms. And when I spoke, he perked up. He didn't open his eyes, but he perked up. And then he fell right back into her. And I feel like that's when God was that. Yes, that was I was at peace. I realized right then everything I did up until that point was so worth it and right. That confirmation, just my biggest fear right there. And he fell into her. So, and for me, yeah, that was God confirming every single thing. So yeah, bonding is very, very, but he wasn't the one, I wasn't the one that he was supposed to be bonding with. And it will be very interesting to see how the future plays out with me doing things apparently completely off the beaten path. Even sitting here now saying these words, I don't know how I can say this, but God has filled me with such peace and faith that that I can say everything is going to be just fine. That I feel that way between all four of his parents, that we will figure it out step by step. And I know that I'm extremely lucky. I think about him every day, but not in the ways that I thought I would. In ways that I was not, I thought I was not strong enough to be able to do this. And that's all I asked from God through this. And everything else will come. I think the way I feel is a gift that God has given me for following his crazy plan. But that is it. I hope that you enjoyed this. I hope it kind of, I don't know, uh, not put you in my shoes, but see, you kind of see what my perspective was and how and why I felt the way and went about the things that I did. I do. I do understand bonding, and I do think it's very important. When my firstborn came out, because of it all, I thought he didn't want me. You know, when I was at home, I think that was the start of, I had a little bit of a baby blues. You know, I didn't think that he wanted me. And everybody's like, you're crazy. Because, when he goes straight to you, he starts crying, and it was just me, and it took a while. But bonding is, yeah. And I've just had all of these experiences. And, and I know it's kind of, you know, unorthodox, I'm learning, but I don't think that that means that it was wrong. All right, I'm going to cut it short here. I appreciate you guys for sticking around. Anybody that's sticking around. I am not sure what my next video is going to be. I have a few that I'm thinking about, because if I was going to go into the order of how things came at me, it would either be a video titled "That's Not God," and would be about faith and being the light, and just a reminder of, having faith and following just doesn't always mean doing the things that we want to do to make light of it. Or it would be that a lot of people thought I was brainwashed and that I needed to go talk to somebody. And there is definitely a story why I didn't go talk to somebody. And kind of, mental health and my history, because it all played a part. I thought about those moments very much. I don't know if you hear the train in the background, but we live next to a train. My kids love it. Me, not so much. But in mental health and all of that, just to kind of, just self-awareness, all of these things that I've looked back on as far as my mental health, and things that I feel like God has, that he was preparing me for this. Just enough to be so self-aware, because I believe that's what it was in the end. He gave me that. So look out, stay tuned. I'm not sure which one I'm going to put out, but I'm pretty sure those are the two that's speaking to me right now. So you all have a wonderful evening, and I will see you in chat.